Imagine someone stole $50 trillion from you. Not from the government, not from a bank, but directly from your pocket, your children's education, and your retirement. While we spent the last decades screaming at each other over statues, pronouns, and library books, the largest transfer of wealth in human history was being completed in broad daylight. Today, we exposed the smokescreen. In a viral moment that shook the halls of the Texas legislature, Representative James Tallarico pointed out a terrifying truth. The culture war is a distraction. It is a weaponized tool used by the ultra-wealthy to ensure you never look at the numbers. In this video, we're going to peel back the curtain. We'll analyze the economic data that proves why you're working harder for less, how the golden age of the American dream was systematically dismantled, and why your anger is being harvested for profit. By the end of this, you won't see the news the same way ever again. To understand how much we've lost, we have to look at what we once had. Between 1945 and 1973, America experienced what economists call the Great Compression. It was an era of unprecedented prosperity, not just for the elite, but for everyone. During this time, productivity and wages grew in perfect lockstep. If a worker produced 20% more value, they took home 20% more pay. It was that simple. In the 1950s, the top marginal tax rate was a staggering 91% under Republican President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The result? Billionaires as we know them today barely existed, because that excess capital was reinvested into the middle class. A single earner with a high school diploma could buy a 3-bedroom house, support a family of 4, and retire with a guaranteed pension. Leisure wasn't a luxury. It was a right. Families took 2-week vacations every summer because the economy was designed to serve people, not just shareholders. Think of it like a neighborhood potluck. Everyone brought a dish, and everyone got a full plate. There was a sense of collective confidence. The American dream wasn't a gamble. It was a mathematical certainty for those who worked hard. But while the nation celebrated this golden age, a small group of thinkers and industrialists were already drafting a plan to take the shared out of the American experience. They didn't want a slice of the pie. They wanted the bakery. Everything seemed perfect, and the trajectory looked unstoppable. But here's the shocking part. The peak of American equality was also the exact moment the trap was set. But here's the thing. In the mid-1970s, the gears of the American dream didn't just slip. They were intentionally re-engineered. This is the moment economists call the Great Decoupling. If you look at a chart of productivity versus pay starting in 1973, the lines split. Productivity continues to skyrocket as technology improves, but worker pay flatlines. Where did all that extra value go? It went straight to the top. According to a landmark study by the Rand Corporation, if the wealth distribution of the glory days had remained the same, the bottom 90% of Americans would be earning an additional $2.5 trillion every single year. To put that in perspective, the average worker making $50,000 today would be making nearly $100,000. But instead of higher wages, we got shareholder primacy in 1965. The average CEO made about 20 times what their typical worker made. By 2024, that ratio surged to over 344 to 1. In some companies, it's over 1,000 to 1. We are living through a second Gilded Age where the 3 richest Americans hold more wealth than the bottom 50% of the entire population. Roughly 165 million people. Let's use an everyday analogy. Imagine you're at a coffee shop. In 1970, your cup of coffee cost 25 cents, and the barista earned enough in an hour to buy 10 cups. Today, that coffee is $5, but the barista's hourly wage hasn't even doubled in real purchasing power. They can now only afford 2 or 3 cups. The coffee shop is making more money than ever. The machines are faster, but the person behind the counter is falling behind. What nobody saw coming was how the ultra-wealthy would protect this lopsided system. They knew that if the 90% realized they were being squeezed, they would unite. They needed a way to keep the working class from looking at the balance sheet. They needed a fire to distract us from the heist, and that is when they perfected the art of the culture war. The real problem wasn't just the money. It was that we were about to be told who to blame for our empty pockets. And it wasn't the billionaires. This is where James Tallarico's message becomes vital. He argues that billionaires use culture wars as a smokescreen. Think about it. Why is the news cycle dominated by debates over what books are in a school library or which bathroom someone uses, while the fact that 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck is treated as a footnote? It's a classic divide-and-conquer strategy. By funding think tanks, media outlets, and political campaigns that lean heavily into identity politics and woke versus anti-woke narratives, the billionaire class ensures that the working class is too busy fighting each other to notice the $50 trillion hole in their collective pocket. Data from the Manifesto Project shows that since the late 2000s, political parties have pivoted away from economic issues like labor rights and healthcare, focusing instead on cultural wedge issues. Why? Because talking about a $25 minimum wage or universal childcare costs billionaires money. Talking about a war on Christmas or cancel culture is free. In fact, it's profitable. It drives clicks, engagement, and donations. But here's where it gets crazy. Many of the figures leading these culture wars are themselves funded by the very billionaires who benefit from deregulation and tax cuts. It is a closed loop. They provide the anger, we provide the votes, and they keep the profits. What would you have done if you were in their shoes, if you owned the media and the lobbyists, and you saw the public getting restless about inequality? Wouldn't you give them an enemy that looks just like them? This isn't just a theory. It's a documented strategy. When the Occupy Wall Street movement began in 2011, focusing purely on the 1% vs. the 99%, the frequency of terms like racism and privilege in major media outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post skyrocketed by over 400% in the following years. While social justice is a legitimate and necessary pursuit, the timing suggests that the elite were more than happy to shift the conversation from class to identity to break the momentum of economic populism. But the most shocking part comes at the very end. The culture war isn't just taking your attention. It's taking your time. Why should you care? Because this isn't just about politics. It's about your life. It's about why you feel exhausted every Sunday night. It's about why the 40-hour work week has turned into a 60-hour grind with 3 side hustles. In 1930, the famous economist John Maynard Keynes predicted that by the 21st century, technology would be so advanced that we would only work 15 hours a week. He thought our biggest problem would be boredom. Instead, we are the most stressed generation in history. Why? Because the leisure that technology was supposed to provide was harvested as profit for the top 1%. As of February 2026, the average American household spends 42% of its income on housing alone. In the 1970s, that figure was closer to 24%. You are working more hours just to pay for the roof over your head, leaving you with no time to actually live under it. Leisure has become a luxury item, like a Rolex or a yacht. This connects directly to your paycheck. When you are kept in a state of cultural anxiety, worried about the other side taking over the country, you are less likely to demand better working conditions or higher pay. You're just happy to survive. This is the subscription life. You don't own your car. You lease it. You don't own your music. You stream it. You don't own your home. You rent it from a private equity firm. This isn't a choice. It's survival. The system is designed to keep you on a treadmill, too tired to look up and realize who's holding the remote control to the TV you watch to escape. Before we wrap up, if this analysis is opening your eyes, hit the like button and subscribe. The algorithm doesn't always like it when we talk about the 1%, so your support is how we keep this channel independent. History tells us that whenever the gap between the ultra-rich and the working class becomes this wide, one of two things happens. Either the system is reformed from within, or it collapses under the weight of its own greed. In the 1930s, we chose the New Deal. Today, we are being pushed toward division. The billionaires want you to ignore the $50 trillion heist. They want you to stay angry at your neighbor, your coworker, and the person across the political aisle. Because as long as you're fighting them, you're not fighting for a fair share of the wealth you created. So here is the final question. Are you going to keep fighting the person next to you? Or are you going to look up at the people holding the strings? The truth is hidden in plain sight, but only if you stop looking at the smoke and start looking at the fire. The choice isn't between left or right, it's between the many and the few. Which side are you on?